Welcome to today's Piece of Peace. Again, I challenge you to start writing out your gratitude each morning. Start your day with a mindset of just what are you thankful for? There's much. So we write out our top 10. And we think, how can I think of 10 things? There are 10 things, at least 10 things that you can find gratitude in. And my top 10 this morning was I call the time I do 4 miles a day just walking and some strength training as are my exercise. But as I walk, I call it my walk talks. So I meet with my mentor sometimes on some of my morning walk talks. And I was just having gratitude for that I have a mentor that I get to do some walk talks with. And then I got to see 3/4 of my children yesterday, and that was very sweet, all at different times. And just having lunch with my oldest son, gratitude for that, for my second oldest, and my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter coming over for dinner and playing with some fireworks after that. Just a fun evening. That I have the ability to exercise. I have gratitude for that my body works and that I can do that daily. And that is such a gift to have a body that works and able to do that. Had another walk talk with a friend in the evening, and that was such a fun. I pretty much consumed her evening, but she's a delight into my heart. Being outside in this morning. I love being in Minneapolis. We have such a short window of opportunity to be outside without being cold. I mean, we can be outside and ski, and we can be outside and ice skate. We can be outside and snowshoe or cross-country ski or whatever it is. When we snowboard or whatever it is. When we try to make a time of being outside in the winter. However, I'm very grateful because I'm more of a summer person. When I can meet with the Lord outside and just be in the open air with him and look at the beauty he has in nature. It just speaks to my heart so much. So I had tons of gratitude with that. That he encouraged me with something that he wanted me to move forward on, and just encouraged me to keep moving forward on it. And that was good. And finding the things I needed on my computer, and even giving me times of rest from my work. I was grateful for that, and for family, and for friends. So lots of gratitude. As I go into the devotion today, I was in Our Daily Bread. This particular devotion was written by Elsa Morgan. She titles it Prayer Eggs, which is a very interesting title. And she brings us to Habakkuk. I'm wondering how many of you actually know where that is in the Bible. But it's towards the end of the Old Testament, a few books before Matthew in the New Testament. But Habakkuk was written from a perspective of a dialogue, which is very cool because I think this is what God wants from each of us, is dialogue, a relationship. So Habakkuk is crying out to God because the leaders of of that time were oppressing the poor and were not making great choices and really harsh, and yet they were being blessed. And Habakkuk had a chip about that. He was just like, why does that keep happening? Why are they keep getting blessed? And when they are just choosing to defile you, Lord. And this is this banter between this prophet and God. So it's written out in that way where Habakkuk's crying out to God, and he's writing out God's response. And he's crying out to God. He's writing out God's response. But in the end, spoiler alert, as you go into finish reading Habakkuk, it's not a big book. It has 3 chapters. But in the end, he really just, no matter what is going down, he's like, I'm going to choose to praise you. And that is such an important message for us. May we be the Habakkuk's of today, where we're crying out to God and we're listening to his response, but we're at least engaging with God, much like he did. So I'm going to start just a few short verses, 1 through 3 in chapter 2. And Habakkuk starts with saying, I will stand at my watch and station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what he will say to me and what answer I am to give to this complaint about the oppression of Babylon. Then the Lord replied, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets, so that the herald may run with it. For the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end, and it will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay. Alyssa writes, and she points out Habakkuk 2:3, though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come. It will not delay. She writes, just outside my kitchen window, a robin built her nest under the eaves of our patio roof. I loved watching her tuck grasses into the safe spot and then hunker down to incubate the eggs. Each morning I checked her progress, but each morning there was nothing. Robin eggs, they take 2 weeks to hatch. Such impatience isn't new for me. I've always strained against the work of waiting, especially in prayer. My husband and I waited nearly 5 years to adopt our first child. Decades ago, author Catherine Marshall wrote, prayer, like eggs, don't hatch as soon as we lay them. The prophet Habakkuk wrestled with the waiting in prayer. Frustrated at God's silence with Babylon's brutal mistreatment of the southern kingdom of Judah, Habakkuk commits to stand at my watch and station myself on the ramparts, and to look to see what he will say to me. God replies that Habakkuk is to wait for the appointed time, and directs Habakkuk to write down the revelation so the word could be spread as soon as it's given. What God doesn't mention is that the appointed time when Babylon's fall, what God doesn't mention is that the appointed time when Babylon falls is 6 decades away. Have you waited that long for an answered prayer? 6 decades? It's a long time to wait. Like eggs. He says, creating a long gap between promise and fulfillment. There's a lot of that. Waiting is difficult. But I know that in God's time, there's incredible glory and beauty that comes with it. She continues, like eggs, prayers often don't hatch immediately, but rather incubate in God's overarching purposes for our world and our lives. His time is perfect. Her charge is, how difficult do you find it to wait while God works? Could it feel like that today, when it's only been a few months since all of our world has changed? And will it be normal? There's a lot going on right now. A lot. And we are in the waiting. She says, how difficult do you find it to wait while God works? While you wait, how can you obey God and what he has already given you to do? So I feel like when I had the gratitude, I was just like, what you've given me to do in this season of time, you've given me the purpose to keep moving forward. What is he giving you in this season of time? What is he having you do in the waiting? It says, like eggs, prayers often don't hatch immediately, but rather incubate in God's overarching purpose for our world and our lives. Her prayer was this: Dear God, help us to trust you to work while I'm waiting. Help me to trust you to work while I'm waiting. Help us to trust you to work while we're waiting. That brought us into Jesus Calling. You can download this on an app, Sarah Young's, or you can order her book online. But today, she writes from the perspective of God speaking to us, and it says, "Trust me in all your thoughts. I know that some thoughts are unconscious or semi-conscious, and I do not hold you responsible for those. But you can direct conscious thoughts much more than you may realize. Practice thinking in certain ways, trusting me, thanking me, and those thoughts become more natural. Reject negative or sinful thoughts as soon as you become aware of them. Don't try to hide them from me. Confess them and leave them with me, and then go on your way lighthearted." That is why Jesus died on the cross. Because we can take that thought, just give it to God, and confess that and go, "I don't want that to be a part of my life. What do you have for me to think about in its place?" And then go on your way lighthearted, like a child. Like, I'm trusting my dad. I'm trusting my King. This method of controlling your thoughts will keep your mind in my presence and your feet on the path of peace. There's today's piece of peace. God bless you in the waiting.